All right. Welcome, everybody, to this remote interview. My name is Lisette, and I'm interviewing people and companies doing great things remotely. And today on the line, all the way, Sonia, I forgot to ask where you were at this moment. Where are you at this moment?
I am in Belgrade based currently, and in Serbia, working for a company that spreads across several continents. So it's just one dot in through the entire world.
Okay, love it, love it. But thank you. So you're in Belgrade, Serbia right now, and I was going to introduce you. So Sonja SVILKIĆ ČIRIĆ, you're a Scrum Master, and the company's called Velsera. We're going to get into that and why I'm interviewing you in just a second. But let's start with, what does your virtual office look like, and what do you need in order to get your work done?
Okay, well, definitely need my desk where I put my laptop, but there are a couple of tweaks that I add to that to have it like more cozy for me. So I need to have my coffee by next to my side, and then try as much as I can to have at least one or two flowers on my desk. Makes the office look a little bit more, nicer, comforting, and there adds a little bit of color to it. I do love having my notebook on the side. I do use virtual notes and use different tools, like digital tools for capturing notes, but I love having a notebook. It's just something that I'm used to doing. Yeah. It's pretty much it. This is the essential part. I do need to have a really comfortable chair. It is really important for me. And yeah, if the room is quiet, then it's a perfect setting.
All right. And do you ever work at the office?
Yes, I do. I try to go regularly, maybe once per 2 weeks, something like that. Sometimes more often, sometimes I don't go there for a month. It just depends on the period. But I do love to meet people there and go from time to time. It's not really often as I would love to.
All right. How far is the office from home, just out of curiosity?
About 10 kilometers. It's
Oh,
not really far, but it does take some time to commute there. So I usually choose working from home, mostly due to commuting.
yeah, especially in the winter. Whoo-wee, it's nice to nice to have the option
Precisely.
there. So I really love the idea that there are flowers on your desk. That's actually one of the things that was really important to me that I didn't realize was so important, was that my surroundings should be beautiful. And I really need it to be beautiful. Otherwise, I just don't work at the productivity that I know I can work at. It's a really weird thing. Like, it shouldn't matter, but it does. So
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It kind of feels a little bit comforting. It feels like home as well, adds a little bit of color. So you're not just focused on your monitor and your computer. You have something beautiful to rest your eyes on. So I think it's nice having it there.
yeah, for some more important than others, but I always love when I meet somebody else where beauty is an important factor in how we work. Love it. So you're working for a company called Velsera as a Scrum Master right
Precisely.
now. What does Velsera do exactly?
Yeah, so Velsera is a global company. We have offices throughout different continents, and we are focused to connect healthcare and life scientists as a precision medicine engine, and enable continuous flow of knowledge between researchers, scientists, clinicians around the world, trying to create insights that would basically radically improve human health. So we are, in a way, in healthcare, but really focused on precision medicine as a company.
All right. And from my understanding, before the pandemic, the company worked primarily in person. Is that correct?
Yes, this is correct. Well, the company was working fully in office. We were not a remote company or a hybrid company, but when COVID started, of course, due to lockdown, everyone went to working from home, and we became a fully remote company until those restrictions were lifted. After that, new company policies was just starting working as a hybrid, in a hybrid mode.
Okay, and for your hybrid mode, was there a mandate to come back to the office, or could everybody decide for themselves? How did it start when the restrictions had just started getting lifted?
So it was on a voluntary basis. when the restrictions were lifted, some people just wanted to go back to the office, meet some people, maybe change a little bit of the environment, or for some other reasons. And the company enabled us to, by going through some specific rules that we had to do because of there were still some restrictions. For example, we had to sit one per office, wear masks in corridors, things like that. But you could actually go to the office if you wanted to change the environment or you needed this office environment again. Then it was able to go. So it was on a voluntary basis. Some people went, some did not. After a while, when restrictions were lifted gradually and more people could gather in the same room and so on, we were able to, for example, 2 or 3 people per office. We needed to, of course, mention that we're going to the office just to inform and who we were in contact with, but it was really nice to be able to even go. And after a while, I think it became apparent that now that we can, most people would maybe prefer to work some days from home. So there were never any mandatory going back for everyone. We just slowly kind of transitioned to this mode of working where people could choose to go to the office or remain home. And this is how it just went. It became official policy for the company after a while.
Have there been any issues with it, like too many people at the office or not enough people at the office or confusion about where people are? Was there any trouble in terms of transitioning?
Well, no, for us, I would say not. Most of the people were still working remotely, so we had kind of some kind of policy to just ensure that we are keeping track of who is in the office. And basically, you just had to mention that you're planning to go into the office next week and which day, maybe. Or while we had some restrictions, we had a rule, for example, that you could apply for one of the offices that you would use. So there were just like, in a way, for our company to track where you are in this moment, if you were in contact with someone else and so on. But it did not interrupt anything. Even, when you're hybrid mode, someone is in the office and someone else, you still need to work online. Our meetings are still online. So it did not disrupt anything or changed anything, basically. So just provided option for some people to actually meet in the office.
And I mean, I know that the company has changed a lot. You've gone through a lot of transitions and you got acquired. And so there's a lot of things coming into play, but how much do people use the office now?
Well, I would say maybe 30%, maybe more. It just depends on the period, I guess. When weather is nicer, a lot of people are there. When the weather is not really
Hmm.
nice, like during winter, fewer people come to the office. Also, when we have some kind of team building or team bonding or some kind of workshop or something organized on the company level, more people tend to come to the office. In those days, it's just kind of surprising seeing so many people after so much time. So there are different options, and as I mentioned, just people can choose. So whoever prefers what, if they are, some people maybe decided to move a little bit away from the main city. So for them, it's like really easier to work from home than to commute to the office.
Okay. And what about equipment at the office? How has that changed to accommodate the hybrid setup? Did you have to get more conference rooms or different conference room equipment, or did anything change about the office in terms of this way of working?
Not as much. Statistics show actually that since they're like 30 to 40% going to the office, we don't have need for all the meeting rooms as we did before, right? So it's kind
Ah,
of
right.
accommodated. When some people are working from home and some are in the office, the number that is not here provided enough space for everyone in the office. We did not need to change anything. And you're meeting from the office where you work in, or you go to some kind of meeting room. Just, we have mostly laptops in the company, so just you can move around, find your spot there, and not much changed, except that we kind of, depending on if you're working from home or from the office, you were able to get your chair, for example, from the office to feel a little bit more comfortable at home if you don't have a comfy chair and so on. So things like that. You could basically have your equipment with you at home, or you can bring it back to work there are some people that come to the office, I think, every day. They prefer it like that. So they have some of their equipment there as well. But there's enough space for everyone, especially now that some people are working remotely. You just have the option to choose, and there's always place you can find in the office. It's like working hybrid within hybrid. No more dedicated offices, mostly just like you choose one. You say you will occupy this office for this day or this week, and that's it.
So my next question is about team building. No, actually, okay, let's go to team building. So in terms of team building, do you do team building mostly at the office? Do you also do like online team building? How have the relationships changed sort of over time? Like when you went remote and then now when you're going hybrid, those are pretty dramatic shifts in some way. So how has team building changed for you all?
It has changed a bit, but we have tried both versions. We also did some online team building, and we did some in-person team building since we started working in a hybrid mode. And both work really fine. Depends, of course, on the type of the team building. But for example, during the lockdown, we had a couple of really nice virtual team building meetings, let's say. One and only Pictionary, of course. It's always fun to play, and a lot of people really like to be involved in that game. So it was just, not too large meetings. It was just per team, maybe up to 10 people, something like that. So we could divide into teams or two or something like that, work together. So it's more game, not for the entire organization, of course, but more for per team basis. But it was really nice doing it virtually as well. We used just some online tools that we found, and it was really nice actually having this type of team building. A lot of laughs during that. One also that I particularly loved is something that is called painting and drinking. It's actually artistic company here from Serbia that they provide for you. For example, it can be arranged with the company for everyone to participate in the city. They can send you painting canvas, colors, paint brushes, things like that. You get it to your mail. And basically, we will arrange a date when we're going to meet for 2 hours approximately. You bring your own drinks. And then from home, we turn on cameras, and the lovely ladies that are actually artists show you how to use the pattern that they provided, like an image, and paint your own painting while drinking and talking to your coworkers. So we did it a couple of times. We did it remotely and in the office, and it was my favorite actually, because you get to paint, relax, unwind a little bit, have a couple of drinks, and then chat and paint through camera or live in the office. So it was a really nice way of bonding with everyone.
Now, I love that you did it both in person and online. Which one was more fun?
Well, both were really interesting. Though I like the way that you get to see everyone's works and how they work and their process while you're live. During online part, we did have our cameras on, but it's just not so easy, to follow progress of everyone on the screen. So you have to see someone. Camera usually like focuses on who is talking at the moment, so you get to see what they do. And we got to show our work to each other afterwards, of course, but it's nice also, of course, being in the office. Both are fine, though I was really surprised how well it worked in the online mode as well.
Oh, interesting. What I always tell people is you want to do multimodal team building when you're hybrid. So some things online, some things in person. So it's nice to hear that some of these team building events translate really well in both sort of mediums. I really like that. So let's go back to when the pandemic hit. So you're working in person and you have to go remote pretty much overnight is really like what the whole world did. How was that transition for your team of just going remote?
So I think it just ran surprisingly well. I actually joined the company just during the lockdown. So for me, I was in this particular company, I was always like a remote child. But it was a really good transition, I would say. They kind of accommodated really quickly. And even if a lot of people might be scared from this remote work and change, I think it really worked for us. because I could not see any major difference in terms of productivity, being accepted to the team, my onboarding, or anything else. It went really, well. And I did not feel excluded or anything like that, working from home, not knowing anyone. It was really welcoming. You got clear processes. You knew how to, go through the onboarding process and everything. So for me, it went really well. So I would say they accommodated really quickly. And I, with the company when I joined, of course, accepted this new way of working. And I would say it was really good. It was just easy to adapt.
Right. And it was so interesting as I hear that from people. A lot of companies are like, yeah, we had to go remote overnight. And it was surprisingly simple to actually go remote overnight. So then my question for you is, what's hard? What's hard about the hybrid way of working now that your team is struggling with?
Well, maybe sometimes I would not say communication per se, but sometimes, there's no body language. There are no those subtle cues that you can see actually when you're interacting with someone in person. So we cannot read people's minds, of course. And when we talk during meetings and when we're communicating about different stuff, you need to pay extra attention not to misunderstand something, to misinterpret or anything like that. So, this communication needs to be really emphasized and worked on throughout the organization, especially in smaller teams. So for me, this is the only challenge sometimes. It's really nice when you're someone in the office talking about someone. It takes a little bit less time to agree on things. And based on just the eye contact, you understand how the people are thinking, what they're actually, just the body language. It's not particularly hard, but it's just something that really helps in communication. So for me, I think the most challenging part, apart from that, is just having too many meetings. I'm not sure if it will be the same case depending on my role in the company, even if I was completely in the office. But it's just meeting after meeting. This is like a typical thing for a Scrum Master role, but still, it really is a struggle sometimes. And I think it's kind of necessary because we have a really large organization with people across the globe. And sometimes you just don't have the option of talking by the water cooler or something like that, where things get really, solved in a couple of minutes chat. So you need that meeting sometimes. And even when we are communicating async through some kind of chat or some other tool, sometimes we just need to confirm things through meeting, actually, to really discuss. And then you need to join. If you want to be in the loop, if you want to follow what's going on in the organization and so on, there are some meetings that are company-wide that you are not maybe mandatory, but you need to attend them in order to find out what's going on the company level and so on. So when you add all that up, it becomes a lot of meetings. So I think this is maybe something I would say a major pain point. Other things are usually something that we really easily resolve, I would say.
Right. Yeah. Especially as a Scrum Master, because you're coordinating things and talking with people and, like solving roadblocks. So yeah, I can understand too many meetings. I hear that a lot from people. How do you know what each other are doing on your team?
Well, we do have some tools that we use, like a source of truth, where we track our work, where we discuss about it. We use Slack a lot to just chat or discuss different things, post comments and so on. But usually it's mostly built on trust, and with a side of metrics, let's say. So we have, I think it's really important in general when going remote or working in a hybrid company, building everything on trust, because I don't think you can really work in a hybrid mode without trust and transparency as a company culture. It's really important. It has to be nurtured. Though we do have some mechanisms to agree together what we're going to work on, to track our work, to help our colleagues understand where we are. We have our daily things, of course, as we're working in Scrum teams. So there are different ways where we track our work. And I think it helps just, to have it everyone aligned, to know where we are. But in general, a lot of it is just based on trust. And I think it's the company culture, because we did not see any decrease in, effectiveness of teams or anything like that. So I think it's just, trusting each other, working together, collaborating, and communicating as much as possible through different channels. Though I do think really that our daily meetings help a lot, and some metrics, of course, that we have.
Have you ever worked with somebody there that was abusing the trust? Like somebody that says they're going to do something and then they don't do something, or you feel like there's some shenanigans going on behind the scenes. I mean, has that ever happened?
I think it happens in every company. It's just inevitable to have cases like that. Just it's not too much. It does not happen really often, and I think we all have different mechanism of dealing with that. So basically, even when it happens, it's usually just communication that resolve things. And there's this shared accountability within teams, feeling responsible together for something. So I think it helps a lot in those cases. And people just, I'm not sure, maybe I'm just over enthusiastic about it, but I just feel that people feel kind of accountable in front of each other, and trust each other. So, if there's just one person who is not doing that, it's really, it damages the entire team. So it's kind of really visible. And when things are set like that, and I think also the agile part of things or Scrum part of things helps actually seeing that, it's kind of becomes transparent, and then you can communicate about it, discuss it, or go back and retrospective, and talk about it and so on. So I think it's inevitable, but it's just depends, of course, on how
Right.
teams are set up.
Right. There's like the team pressure or personal accountability to each other. There's that. And you've got the agile methodologies on top of that. So when people aren't delivering, it kind of becomes apparent rather quickly if somebody's not doing what they say they're doing. I find it so interesting because a lot of leaders are so concerned about people's productivity when they're not in the office. But from my experience and from talking, I mean, as if you listen to every podcast episode, nobody has said that they have had a lot of people abusing the system. Everybody says, no, it just, maybe it happens, but you pick up on it so fast that it's just not an issue. So it's so interesting. I have a couple more questions, but I realize we're running out of time, but I have a couple more questions. One thing I want to talk about is burnout. So we've talked about like, hey, people are really productive, but are they too productive? Like, how do you keep from burning out yourself? But how does your also team take care of each other? What do you have in place for that?
Yeah, so I think it was an issue in the beginning. And it's also maybe due to the lockdown or us not having anything else to do with our lives but sit in our homes. So it kind of happened when we started, but I think eventually just leveled out. People became aware that we have those core working hours, which is one of the things which is for us, I think, really, really important, especially working across continents. So those core working hours are basically what we use to set up meetings, things like that. And apart from maybe some really special cases, we usually try to have our meetings within those core working hours. Where time zones overlap, this means no overtime for some teams, means not going to meeting in a different time zone or something like that. So it kind of helps us keep track of that, so people actually know, how what are the hours when they should schedule meeting, especially when working with someone overseas. So it helps a lot. Trying to take as much breaks as possible. I always try to coach my team to just let's have a break during the meeting, or something like that. So we just need a couple minutes or 10 minutes to unwind. And I think understanding the benefits of focus time is also really important, because you just need those blocks of focus time to be able to work on something that requires peace and quiet. So I actually try to block meetings and then leave larger blocks of time for people to do other things. And this also gives them opportunity to go to lunch or have a little bit of rest. So this is what I was trying to do in the previous period, just block time like that. So we actually have blocks of meetings and then larger blocks of time, which is just focus time where you can work or just take a little bit of break. I think it's really important to see things like that, so.
I love it. I love that you're encouraging people to take more breaks. I think that that's probably one of the key things is just getting away from the screen just for a few minutes. I find that if I sit down and I just have a 5-minute brainstorm away from the screen, I can get a lot more in that 5 minutes than if I just try to power through without taking any time away from the screen. So, one last thing that I wanted to talk about was you mentioned that you were onboarded remotely. I would love to know about your experience. How do you integrate into a company remotely? What are some of the things that Velsera did to help you integrate? And what are some of the things that you did yourself to sort of get to know the lay of the land?
Yeah, so for me, it was first day was really stressful because I did not know what to expect. But actually, from meeting number 1 or 2, it became apparent that it will go really well. There are just policies in place that kind of follow the entire onboarding process. Onboarding on a company level, something that Velsera is, and our main policies and operating procedures. Then narrowing it down to team onboarding, talking about things that are specific to the team that I will be integrated in, and then having mentorship from senior team members that kind of guided me through the process. I also love that I had actually enough time to onboard. There was no rush, no pressure, just you have a timeline with all those set meetings, with a lot of documentation, with explanation about the procedures and policies that you go through. And I think it's really important from the professional side of things to know that you're supported in any possible way for this onboarding. And then the expectation is that you onboard before you actually start working. So for me, it was really a lot to think about onboarding and what's going on in the world with the pandemics, but kind of company just helped me with that. So it was one stress less, let's say, at the moment. And from the people side of things, we also did those little games. We talked a lot in our meetings. And as soon as some of the restrictions were lifted, we were able to gather at least the team I was integrated in, which helped a lot to meet everyone in person. So beside like regular meetings and one-on-ones and meetings with the entire team or those little games that we play and chat, it was just also maybe the one most important part was actually meeting them alive and doing something together after a couple of months. But apart from that, the entire process is just really well organized. And I think this is maybe the key, giving the time for someone to onboard and having it like really well organized and structured.
Right, right. And this is, I think, a place where a lot of companies drop the ball. You definitely want to have a plan in place for somebody when you want it to be well organized. I mean, that you definitely need that. And you want to have a lot of mentors and meetings and like ways of introducing people. So it sounds like it was a good system there. So for other people listening about how to onboard, have a plan. I think that's the most important thing. All right. So last question as we end things. Well, 2 questions, one somewhat hard and some really easy. So the last real question that I have is, if you were to give advice to somebody going into a hybrid company where you get to
Yeah.
choose, what advice would you give?
Yeah. So first of all, thinking about company culture and how it was transferred to this hybrid mode. Does it fit actually working in hybrid mode? Also building the culture on trust and transparency for me is one of the really important things. As I mentioned before, there are tools, of course, like metrics and work frames like Scrum that help you gain this transparency, but it's also about the culture in general for me. So I think company culture needs to be built on trust and transparency. Also providing resources, having tools, applications, equipment that supports this, so employees do not need to think about those things actually and just focus on what they do. And of course, understanding the importance of communication and not taking it like for granted, because communicating is different when we're remote, and it requires additional set of ears or eyes, let's say, to actually understand and avoid misinterpretations. So if there are unclarities, maybe knowing when to take things from async to sync and so on. So just emphasizing this communication and working on that. Also, I would say workshops. Workshops help a lot.
Indeed, trainings can
Yeah,
help.
of course.
So I love it. So one, questioning, does this hybrid culture fit to begin with? Like, so one, just like really giving some thought into that, focusing on trust and transparency in the system, providing resources and tools, paying attention to communication, and giving training where needed. Those are some great tips for people who are going into a remote first culture like what you're doing at Velsera. The very last question of the day, Sonja, if people want to learn more about you online and contact you, what's the best place? Where do you go online to be online?
Yeah, well, LinkedIn probably. So I'm active there, so anyone can contact me via LinkedIn. Of course, my email, but I would say LinkedIn is the maybe go-to place where I sometimes post some nice articles or just chat with anyone who comes by. So yeah, maybe the
Great.
best place to find me.
Great. So we'll put that in the show notes for people if they want to follow up with you and talk more about it. Thank you so much today for your time today. I took copious notes and I look forward to putting the show notes together.
Thank you
Really,
for having
thanks
me.
for sharing your story.
Thank
All right.
you.
Until next time, everybody, be powerful.